Here I am back again with another tutorial video that kind of wants to explain how Exosisters work. I haven't completely figured out every single inch that you can get with this deck, but I feel like I've grasped the gameplay of this deck mostly, and since I already did a deck profile on it, budget deck profile, so if you're interested in that, check out my channel. It will be also in the description. I want to show you what this deck kind of does, explain kind of the strengths and the weaknesses and how you probably want to be playing this deck most of the time. And for that, I have sorted out one replay that shows the strengths perfectly, but also shows the weaknesses. First of all, the hand is a very pure Exosister hand, which you can see since all of the cards are Exosister cards, which won't be the case most of the time because there isn't that many, especially in the budget variant, which I'm playing. I cut packs down to 1 and so on. So this is a bit less than that, and all we can do here actually is well, we could first of all actually play Exosister Carpe Diem because this card does stuff, and what it does can be actually quite strong. You can declare one card name and negate the activated effects and effects on the field of cards with that original name. So if I'm not mistaken, it should be blocking hand traps because it blocks activated effects. It doesn't matter if they activate on the field or not. So technically this should work against hand traps. But the problem is, I don't know how the chains work. I think you could still chain it to your summon if you then search stuff. It's a bit complicated ruling wise, and I'm not all about that. So if you know someone that is quite rule savvy, might want to clear this up with them. But I did decide to not go for this anyway in the end, and just go for the arena combos because I thought maybe you can bait an Ash Blossom there. Maybe get this card out because there's scenarios where I won't be able to call Ash Blossom, and I'd rather have the card out now because I already have a good enough setup anyway without having to deal with this. So I didn't really care if they used Ash Blossom this turn, so I kind of wanted them to use it anyway, so I didn't go for the whole trialing that. We sent the other Irene back because that's obviously something that we don't want in our hand, the second one, and we draw Stella for it. Helps us not at all, but keeps the hand pure again. No extenders, no other disruptions, just Exosister. And what we're going to do next, who would have thought, we are going to special summon Ellis so we can go into rank 4s. And what we're going to go into is, I think, Michaelis probably would make the most sense. And yes, there it is, which we will use to actually search packs since we have both of the other cards. It doesn't matter all that much, but there's one massive problem with especially this hand. You don't have that many extensions, so technically it's very good for us that we will be able to get packs here, because otherwise we would have probably searched for either Carpe Diem or Armament, whichever we didn't have. But if we didn't have any of those two, we either would have drawn another extender or we would have drawn another spell trap, so we would still be able to do stuff to our opponents. But yeah, let's see how this plays out. We get packs, we summon out one Exosister, and since I don't know what we're playing against, but I see a 60 card deck, I thought possibly it could be a deck that utilizes the graveyard with the lawn mowing kind of thing, but it will or will not be this. So I end the turn with just using Effective Sophia and leaving Sophia out, getting another Hat Tricker. We could have extended here, used Hat Tricker, go into another Xyz, but since we already used up Ellis this turn and we used it for Michaelis, then we cannot summon Ellis again. So searching another Ellis wouldn't have done much, and since this is a budget version, I didn't really want to go into any of the other extra deck monsters because there's not that much that actually would make sense or anything at all. So I thought if we're playing against a deck that does anything to either player's graveyards, then having one Exosister on board might be quite nice, and having Armament and Carpe Diem to shut down your opponent is also something that is quite neat. And then you have Hat Tricker and Stella possibly for the next turn was the idea here. So we just sit Armament and pass over the turn, and now we can see what our opponent does. They normal summon Unizombie, and we instantly see our chance here and actually go into Armament. And with Armament we use Michaelis because I thought if this is a graveyard kind of deck, then I do want to get rid of Michaelis because I kind of want to be able to summon it again. First of all, I think this one doesn't have the... I thought they all had the effect that you have to special summon another monster that you don't control. It is just Armament that does it, but this one is a disruption, can stop effects. But I also wanted to be able to trigger Carpe Diem, so I could use this card already for Unizombie. could have saved it for something else, but I thought they wouldn't have the that grass looks greener, which we will see in a second that that might not be the case. I could have, instead of Gibrine, also gone for, especially if I know they're playing a zombie kind of variant, I could have gone for a Sophiel. I just thought, if I shut down Unizombie now, their normal summon is out, sometimes they can't really do much more after, and yes, but you could have also obviously gone for the card that stops either player from activating card effects in the graveyard, which would have been nice, I assume, but I didn't know what exact deck we were playing against. 60 card decks with zombies in it can be basically anything, so I wanted to go for the other disruption that this deck has, and also trigger Carpe Diem and then call Unizombie, so they couldn't use that card effect. There's probably a different approach you can take towards that turn. This deck has quite a lot of things you can change, you can do differently, and you have to be quite a good player to actually know which is the exact good play this time. Since I didn't know what deck it was, I could have tried to hold out on my Armament a bit more, but then Unizombie would have gone through, and I definitely did not want to let that resolve, because we did not have a disruption on board at all. And they try to activate Unizombie, find out that it is negated by Carpe Diem, which is quite good, and then they use another one of their extenders, which is Monster Reborn, to get stuff from my graveyard back, which also wouldn't have been stopped if I used the Sophiel, because that just stops you from activating cards in the graveyard, but it doesn't stop you from moving cards in the graveyard. But I have Sophia, which cares about these kind of things, especially if it's my graveyard as well. They're not happy about this either, so this is something I can be using as well. And from that point onwards, I could have gone into Sophiel again, but I thought if they go into Halka Firebrax, a Sophiel doesn't do that much, then they could still run me down, so I wanted to get another disruption, even though I still hadn't used Gibrine, so technically I could have, if they go into Hulk, could have left it open. But if they have any more extenders, then go into Verte Anaconda possibly, or some kind of other shenanigans, I wanted to be able, I could clear their board, and that is why I went into the second Michaelis, because this card can banish one card from your opponent's graveyard or from your opponent's field, which is quite strong, and that's what I went for. They went into Halka Firebrax because obviously they have a tuner and a non-tuner monster, and this card is insane. So I shut this down with Gibrine. Obviously, Gibrine should have been summoned in defense position. I misclicked there, and yeah, it's Master Duel. These kind of things happen, especially if you're not doing it with your own hands, but just clicking some buttons, then that is a thing that can happen. Sometimes I try to play a bit quicker to actually get somewhere, because I've probably done a few matches this day, and I just wanted to get going a bit. But yeah, this card is obviously way better in defense, don't have to tell me that one, but it doesn't really matter, because the effect that you can use still doing your turn then is only gaining 800 attack points, which can finish the game, but we were in no position where we actually could. We negated the effect, and then it starts. That grass looks greener. They held it for quite long, and obviously they drew it, because a 60 card deck with 3 copies in it always draws it. And here we go. They waited, probably like quite well played by them, because they waited till I had all my possible outcomes of sealing their graveyard out, and now I didn't have any, so they could fire that one, and they get quite a few triggered. Gladly they play Skull Servant and not some deck that actually mega utilizes this card. There are some decks that from that point onwards would definitely run you down to infinity and beyond, but Skull Servants tend to not have that many graveyard effects that matter instantly. I wouldn't have lost this card if I summoned in defense position, but like I said, things happen. They end the turn, activate their Golden Lord stuff in the graveyard, which, why wouldn't you? They set 2 Sanguines, if I'm not mistaken, for some reason. Don't know if they didn't have any. I'm not really a Eldritch player. I always felt this deck very appalling. Not by itself, but I don't know. Playing against it felt very floodgatey. I kind of like the engine, but that's about it. I decided to get rid of Halki Firebrax here, not one of the spell traps, because they had 2 anyway. And technically, leaving Hulk open would have been good if it was any other linked monster that wasn't Hulk, because I could have just gone to Utopia double and just ran them down. Sanguine wouldn't have mattered to me whatsoever. But since Halka Firebrax can tag out during my turn and summon a monster defense position and possibly even pop my Carpe Diem and stuff like that, I did not want to do that, so I decided to go for Michaelis. onto the Halqifibrax, so I do not have to deal with this kind of effect as well. And since they will trigger one of their Sanguines anyway, since they sat 2, that's possibly the reason why they did. Maybe they were scared that I was going to get rid of one of them and they really wanted to resolve the effect, possibly. So I definitely wanted to do that then. Instant using the effect to Surge. If they have something, they would use it, which they did. And I think they want to get out the Golden Lord, which is fine. It's okay. It's not a card that I should be too worried about at this stage, at least. And I am getting another Armin for the next turn. I did have the problem, though, that this specific version would have run out of disruptions that aren't like the Graveyard Stoppers, which is still great. I'll still have an Asophiel. Usually you might have one more Kalis or one more of the Gibrines, which I did not, but that's the specific variant that I'm playing. The more cards of them you obviously have, the less budget your variant will be, so you won't have these kind of problems. But I had to play around this a bit. Going into Stella and Hat Tricker, could have done the other way around, but not much to do here. Going into one of the rank 4s, which is the one that can send cards back to your opponent's hand, because that is the only way this deck can actually clear cards like Eldritch the Golden Lord. And that is a bit of a problem, because this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. This deck in the extra deck has no monster that's really powerful to get over 3000 defense points, for example. So what you have to do most of the time is go into Utopia Double, which hurts quite a lot. There's obviously cards, especially even in the budget variant, that you could use, like Malevolent Sins, I think is what it's called. It's not that great though, because your opponent gets the monster back, so it's only good if you want to actually OTK your opponent. Other than that, I would be running Utopia Double, but there's lots of cards you could be running to get rid of these kind of threats, but that's one of the downsides of this deck, what I felt like. So getting rid of it would be this. I activated my Carpe Diem and called Sanguine. I could have called any like hand trap, but there was not really anything I was going to do from that point onwards, so it didn't really matter what I called. There was nothing really that could have happened. I checked the graveyard, there was no effect that I could have called, so I just called Sanguine because I didn't read the card, let's be honest, and I thought they could tag it out in the end phase and set another card, but their effects are once per turn and once per turn each, so, well, not each, so they can only use one of these effects per turn, which, yeah, didn't read, so I just called it that, but it didn't really matter at that point. But make sure you actually call the right card, because even during your turn, Carpe Diem can be very, very, very important to you. Going in for some damage, destroying the last Sanguine, which is what I could have done as well. I knew that I could have done that, so that is fine. And setting one of the permanents and setting the other Armand. Definitely want to use the Armand as quickly as possible, so they cannot use anything else, which they still can, because they can obviously use the Scarlet Sanguine. I could have held this back a bit to play around with Carpe Diem a bit more, because right now I don't know what they have in their hand, obviously, so I wasn't sure, but I knew their game plan is play King of the Skull Servants, so what I did was just call King of the Skull Servants so they can't get any attack. Could have possibly waited, but then if they activate more graveyard effects, this would have been also a bit problematic for me. So it's quite a hard thing to time these things, especially against these decks, and especially if they have 6 cards in hand and you don't know what they're going to be playing. You want to shut their graveyard down as quickly as possible, and that is what I tried to do with Caspital. Then calling Killing the Skull Servants to shut down their main win condition, I assume, besides the link plays that they have, and go on from there. I knew I had still an infinite impermanence, so I didn't have to be as cautious as I might have had to be if I didn't have another disruption. So what we're going for now is they're going for the Golden Lord. They cannot really do much more with the Golden Lord. They summon one of this card and get rid of my Carpe Diem, because this card has screwed them over quite a lot. It wouldn't have mattered anymore at this point, because like you see, another weakness of this deck specifically is the grind game so far still, because there's not that much you can do. You run out of cards eventually. Yes, you have the Monster Searcher and you have the Spell Trap Searcher, but if they get cleared on your board, then you have a bit of a problem, because you cannot do much. And sometimes you would use them as an Exist material as well, so they get off your board. And if you then don't have enough cards in your hand and you only draw one, then you won't be able to go into Exist the next turn, and then you can't keep up this this resource loop. And eventually your opponent might out-resource you, especially if they dump like 20 odd cards into the graveyard. So a bit problematic here. they use the King of Skull Servant and White Mare, which they cannot activate in the graveyard gladly, and go into Verta Anaconda. So another point, if I didn't have my impermanence, this would have been quite devastating actually for me. Normal variants could have used some cards then during my turn if they didn't clear my board, but with Phoenix Destroyer they could have, and go into the whole Utopia F-Zero combo to do some more stuff. But since I'm not playing this because it's the budget variant, I did not have that option for the next turn. Gladly, that is all they could do, and I would have run over them the next turn, definitely. So they just surrendered the game, and that is all they wrote, which is fine. I mean, things happen. That's how the deck works. That's mainly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be playing around with either disruptions that you draw yourself, like impermanence, or the cheaper variants. I just put one impermanence in here because they were in the new master pack bundle kind of thing. And you will be playing around with Exosister stuff. And this is how the deck is if your opponent actually does stuff to the graveyard. So if the opponent doesn't, you actually have even less plays. Yes, you can set up like 1 to 2 disruptions for your opponent. You have a somewhat grind game, I want to say. But like you see right now, this deck isn't perfect. There's still a lot to do, and most of its power comes from cards that you splash in that are just power cards in general rather than from the actual engine. Which is a bit sad, but there's still 3 support cards I think still missing. I think there's one more main deck monster, there's one rank 8 monster, there might be another rank 4, but I'm not 100% sure. There's definitely stuff that can be still done, which we'll wait for the future. Hopefully they are not going to be both ultra rares, but they might be. So till then, hopefully you enjoyed this video, learned a bit how to play this deck, and hope you're having a good day.